as we are going about our life, if there's something that, again, brings in an emotional reaction, as we talked about the kids with the loud music, and you know what, I mean, I grew up in the 70s partying my brains out. I understand. I turned that music up really loud. I have no issues with that. I get it. And all I can say is this was so loud, just so you get the picture in your head. The neighbors were coming out of their condos going, what the hell is going on? You know, it was that loud. And so it was crazy loud. But until we flipped the switch on that, until we understood what was the interaction between us and these kids, as we call them, they're not kids, they're souls. Until I got to the bottom of it, until Tracy got to the bottom of it, that there was that constant dance between us, that oscillation, that energy going back and forth, that antagonism. Even though on the surface of my life I would say good morning to him, still that was carrying what? It was carrying stuff that was stored within my energy body. And I drew this up here so that we can get into this a little bit, because this is really the foundation for understanding where this goes. And this is just a quick drawing. This isn't, you know, perfect, obviously. So you got your human being here, and this we call the subconscious, and we call this the mental conscious, and this is all outlined in the courses of Unarius, and this is your superconscious. So within the subconscious, you can think of the subconscious as if you went to build a house and you didn't like that house, so you knocked it down, but you kept the foundation, you put a new house on it. That's your subconscious. That's when you incarnate into this lifetime. And you're carrying the weight of all that past that is the foundation, but you're building on it again. The mental conscious is all the experiences that you've gone through in many past lives that have enough of a force that they will impinge themselves as some kind of experience or emotional imprint or stamp upon you, and therefore in your energy body. And then what we call the super consciousness, or your higher self, and this is where is stored all the lessons that we have learned, and is our connection to the infinite flame. Some people call it God, we call it the fountainhead, or the infinite consciousness. And so as we go through life, many of us have learned that, like for myself, I knew from a very young age there's no way I could shoot or kill anybody. I just knew that. And I grew up in a military family, which was no accident. Because, and here we'll give you another example, there's a reason why I knew from a very young age there was no way I could kill or shoot anybody. I just couldn't. I knew it. My father wanted me to go to Annapolis. He was an officer in the Navy. Annapolis is the military school for the Navy. And, you know, I remember at 5 years old looking up at him and going, well, that ain't happening. And it just you know, tore him apart. Here's his son telling him, no, I'm not going to do that. He gave me a rifle at 4 years old. Okay. Now some people, most of you have reacted the way I hear it most of the time when I say that. Every once in a while somebody's in the room says, why, what's wrong with giving a kid a rifle? I was 4 years old, 22 for God's sake. I couldn't even lift the thing, you know? So, why? You know, you talk to your average person, they'd say, well, you know, it just was. No, there's a reason for it. There's a reason why I knew I couldn't murder anybody in this lifetime. There's a reason why I incarnated into a military family. And it goes right back to this mental consciousness and what I had stored within my energy body. I did not get along with my parents. I did not, especially didn't get along with my dad. Now, before I got into past life therapy and beginning to understand I'd lived before, my reaction to them was, they are just stupid people. They don't know anything, and my life would be perfect if they weren't in it. I'm sorry?
Before or later?
Actually, I remember looking at my dad at 6 years old thinking, what a doofus. I mean, just the reactions and the emotions from the past were so strong that I just, you know, I couldn't understand why I was there. There was absolutely, in my mind, no relativity there whatsoever. Until I began to decipher where we had come in contact with each other before. And this was years and years later when I began to use the tools and the principles as taught by Unarius, where we actually go through steps, which we can't do today, there's not enough time, to go back and begin to look into good things, bad things that have happened throughout our life and write them out. And then be open to the fears and the insecurities that we have and write those out. And then what happens is, as you're studying these texts and you're beginning to quest within, every one of us has angels at work with us, spiritual guides. the more you are open and the more you want to really, truly understand, guess what happens to your mind? It begins to open up. And the more it opens up, the more positive information you get. Positive in the sense that you're then able to take that intelligent information and resolve something that's happening right now. Okay, so I'm in a family, I don't get it. My dad's handing me rifles. I'm saying I'm not going to go to Annapolis. I don't want to shoot rifles with you, all this type of stuff. Well, as I went through the whole tools, as we said, one of them is writing down good things and bad things. So I started to do this at 19. By the way, my father was a full-blown alcoholic. Drank one of those huge things of whiskey a day. It's ridiculous. So at about 8 or 9 years old, my father took me to start learning how to play golf. Okay. Well, he was a terrible golfer, but he was going to teach me. And I'm 8 or 9 years old, and so you go into a driving range, and there I am, and you pull the club back and you try and hit a golf ball. Well, he's standing behind me, and we're on the driving range. He's probably right about where Tracy is. And he says, "Okay, go ahead and swing." I hit him right in the temple, knocked him out cold. He slumped to the ground, and I'm standing over him with a golf club. Adults are running up, and I'm going, "But he told me to swing." Well, when you begin to understand and begin to delve into and ask, where did that come from? What could that golf club represent? A weapon. Why would my father want to give me a weapon? We met on the battlefield before. And all that resentment, all that anger that we had in this lifetime, there was a continuity there. There was a history between us. And when I began to understand that, I could look back and go, wow, no wonder that happened. There's no accidents. That was a continuity from the past. Once I began to understand that there was a continuity between he and I going back, and that, it wasn't him and I was perfect, and it wasn't me and he was perfect. There was this, if you want to call it that, a cosmic dance, a karmic dance between us that was going on that drew me to that family so I could begin to understand and work out these things. I started getting my answers. And I started seeing the past between he and I. And at 19 years old, I realized, and for the first time, I said, this man raised me the absolute best that he knew how. It may not have been perfect, but he loved me the only way he knew how. So I sat down and I wrote a letter to him. My parents lived in Tucson, Tucson or Phoenix at the time. I wrote him a letter telling him that exact thing. And I'd learned enough, if you ever want to help somebody, what do you not do? You don't look at them and say, you got to change and I got the stuff that you need to understand. Just don't ever do that. It never works. So I knew, going into that situation, I wasn't going to write him a letter saying, I recognize this past and good thing I killed you back then. What I knew was I wanted to relate to him how much I appreciated him as a human being, as a soul. Because I did. All of a sudden I recognized, I saw who he really was. The vision of my father wasn't clouded by the negation that we had incurred between the two of us. So I wrote him that letter and I said, Dad, I just want you to know I love you. And you raised me the best you knew how. And I love you for that. I put it in an envelope, wrote on it, Mom, this is not for you, all over it, sent it off. 4 days later, my mother shows up in San Diego, walks into the restaurant where I was a busboy, walks right up to me, and she says, what did you write to your father? He quit drinking. That's the power of understanding these paths between ourselves and other people. I didn't have to tell my dad, and I didn't. I've never told him about the past between us because he was never interested. And it didn't matter. What mattered was my recognition, my awareness, my understanding, and seeing humanity in another soul, in another human being. And that I was the problem. I was the one that was hanging on to the resentment. And when I let that go, it completely changed the dynamic of our relationship. And it didn't mean that, I agreed with everything he said. It didn't, but The difference was, as I was no longer emotional with that person. You know, he could say whatever he wanted to say, and I could just say, okay, whatever, Dad. You know, I don't agree with you, but whatever, it's okay. And that's the pragmatic, practical approach to understanding that you've lived before. Because they take it out of that realm of trying to be somebody famous or being an ego thing, and you take it into the awareness that this is the problem that this whole world has, is this inability to understand who we really are and the reason for being here, and being able to take it to that next level and take it to the very human level of recognizing another soul and appreciating them. So, do you have something to add?
10 minutes?
We have 10 minutes. Open up for questions? Yes.
I have read a lot about this stuff, and I was told, and I was under the impression personally, that there are just people that are not old souls, that they have not been reincarnated that many times. And that's kind of why we can't communicate with them, because we're an old soul and we have a higher consciousness. And there's a lower being. It doesn't mean because they have accumulated masses of money that they're better, really. Maybe they're suffering, maybe they're unhappy. It's not the material wealth that brings them any fulfillment, really. And they, you know, maybe they went their whole life with the resentment without realizing it. I have a situation like that going on right now with one of my parents. And I feel like I can't communicate with that person. I never could, because I'm an old soul, and I'm really into all this. I kind of connect with it. I'm very psychic. And I just don't think that everybody has that, you know, reincarnation.
Well,
They're not, he or she is just not there yet. And what happens is most people go through an entire lifetime and maybe resolve one thing from a past life. That's all that they're able to do, because they're not at that development. As we reincarnate over and over again, we start to feel, does anybody feel a lot of guilt in this lifetime? I'm someone who, since I was a very young child, I didn't even have to do anything wrong, and somebody would look at me and go, oh, what did I do? I feel guilty. Well, that guilt is a buildup of a static charge of energy from all the things that I did misuse energy in my past life. So when you're further along and you've incarnated and you reach that point where you know you can't keep regenerating that same materialistic lifetime, the same misuse of energy of, you know, whether we killed somebody or we put him in jail or we whatever it was that we did, and those are extreme examples, or just had relationships where we were poor people, we just, not poor financially, but poor in how we treated people. When we get to that point, there is a difference in our frequency, because we're opening up to a higher self, we're asking questions, we want to change, and what the importance is, as Kevin's example with his father, is not to judge that other person, we just recognize we all have the psychic body, we all have the higher self, the mental self, the subconscious, and those of us who are a little bit further along and maybe polarized more experiences. We all have what's called a life cycle, where we have to learn that it's okay not to kill people, it's okay not to murder, it's okay not to cheat on your husband or your wife or your boyfriend, it's okay not to treat your co-workers like dirt if you were the supervisor and they're your employee. And as you go up those positive experiences, you're oscillating at a higher frequency. Just like you said, you're vibrating at a higher frequency. However, because you incarnated into that family, there is definite karma that you have with that person, that parent, that you may not feel relative to. So just respect that person, as Kevin did, recognize they have a higher self, and they're here to learn something from you and you from them, and vice versa. And we don't always have to do it in this lifetime. Sometimes that person can make the transition. There is no such thing as death, in case you didn't already know that. Make that transition, and you can still be having awarenesses and recognitions and working out with that person on the other side. And it's ongoing for all of us. Yes?
Do you think that that we switch between different types of life forms, for example, between animals or plants and
No.
things like
No,
that?
only
It's
as,
humans?
yeah, all as humans.
humans
On
are
the
self-aware.
earth?
On Earth, on third-dimensional planets, and also non-atomic. But all of us who are here, as Kevin talked about earlier, 99.999% of us, we're going to keep coming back to an Earth plane, third-dimensional, for a while.
Is our plane or
This one or to other ones.
Whatever you are relative
Yeah.
to. Just like we were talking about earlier, you know, if you have those of us who remember this, you got a radio and you have an antenna, or you have a TV, you have the funny ears on top, you know, funny ears. And you say, well, I'm going to get this station. Well, you didn't pick up your TV and you walk it up to the hill where the transmitter was and sit it down and go, hey, I'm going to get it now. No, you use those bunny ears, remember? And you move them the right way, and all of a sudden the picture would be clear.
Right.
So did the station come to you, or did you go to the station? No. You were both oscillating at the same vibration. So there was a communicational link there. Your vibration, who you are as a person, you oscillate at a certain frequency. That is what is drawing you to different situations and different experiences and to different earth holes and or this world. You see. So that's why you are here, and that's what you need to learn. And as you learn, you will incarnate on other worlds if that is what your need is. Yes?
You said some people reincarnate immediately and some people wait. Is there
Yes.
like a large variance in time? Is it just choice?
Part of it is choice. Part of it is the understanding of the soul. If there is for instance, I know the founder of Unarius talked about a person who's killed in a battle in war, and because he was beginning these lessons shortly after World War II, they may come back immediately.
Yeah.
Okay. Or, because it was a tremendous psychic shock and they don't have the real awareness yet. They didn't take in that awareness that I'm dead and I want to go to the inner
So
plane.
how you pass makes a difference.
It can make a difference.
Yeah, somebody
And
could-
why do you forget? Like one woman said that when you have birth, that causes a lot of memory loss. And what accounts for not remembering a lot of past?
Well, if you remember, think of it in these terms. Don't think of it that you've lived once or twice before or 5 times. What if you've lived 1,000 times or 10,000 times before? What if you could remember all of that at once? You go crazy.
Yeah.
So infinite intelligence has set it in motion so that all of us incarnate not with the total conscious knowledge of all those different things, but that as we wish to understand and explore those things, we can get those answers. Now, in deference to what you said before, actually, kids are much more open than we are. Because they haven't been programmed to think that it's wrong or that it's not true or you can't think that. There's certain things I went through as a child that it wasn't until I began this exploration myself that I looked back and went, oh, that's what was going on. Because I was having psychic memories of different things I needed to understand. And it's not, again, this is not something that is only certain people are blessed with. Everybody has a higher self. I think if everybody here sat down and was very open and began this whole process of opening up your consciousness, every one of you would have awarenesses of not only your past lives, but you'd think back to your childhood and go, oh, that's why that happened. That's where that was coming from. That's why I had those dreams. Somebody else in the back.
He's asking you probably.
Yeah, why is it that institutions and ideologies seem to take on a life of their own and perpetuate themselves, generation after generation?
I mean, like Christianity?
Well, I'm talking about any type of thing, any type of ideas or institutions, nation states, ideologies.
Because that's what's happened in the past. And until you begin to stop and change and look and be objective and open to your higher self, you're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Change is hard.
Is that a collective energy that
It can be.
souls have agreed
Absolutely.
upon?
Yes.
It can be. It
Yeah.
can very well be. A cycle returning again.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think you had your hand up a bunch.
Yeah, Ned, you've got it.
What do you have to do to yourself physically, mentally, emotionally in order to prepare to be able to start to meditate and receive information about your past?
Okay,
Very
she
good
asked,
question.
what do you have to do to prepare yourself mentally, emotionally, physically, meditate to be able to receive information? And that's going to lead into the end for today. What we do, which we talked about at the beginning, is study energy. Study energy, understand yourself as an energy being, and the principles of energy are outlined in this book and several other Unarius texts. We also have, and we don't advocate meditation, we don't advocate
Not in the
life.
sense that you're meditating on a word,
Right.
something like that, but quiet contemplation.
Definitely. And one of the best places that I've gotten answers, 2 best places, answers to past lives, is driving, not in traffic, but driving. It's very relaxing, and also taking a shower. Quiet.
Mind's
calm,
cleared of everything.
And I'm not
All of a
thinking
sudden
about
something drops
anything. I'm
in.
not using my conscious mind and saying, I gotta find out the answer. No, it just comes all of a sudden. I
How
have.
do you know that that's what it is? at the same time?
When you have, and this is an important aspect of what we're talking about, and this is why I want to say it's very practical, it's pragmatic, it works. When you have a real recognition of a particular past, and it's valid, guess what happens?
Changes.
You have a change, you have a tremendous healing. If my recognition with my father wasn't right on, I wouldn't have that healing. And the healing I'm talking about goes way beyond just being able to verbally say, I love you. It went right to my core. And that's the only way I can describe it. When you have a real recognition of the past, and you have that change and releasement of that negation, it's like you get plugged in to a light socket, and all of a sudden your whole body goes, whoa, you know.
Everybody can tell.
And everybody can tell. Your vibration changes, your tastes change, your whole being changes, and it works.
So Kevin, if you have not worked out your past with your father, you would have found a way to reincarnate back with him again.
And that's another good point. Yes.
You
Yes.
would automatically be drawn back.
You're going to draw back, and that's why, you know, how many people have been in situations where,
Time is up. We have this book, Past Life Therapy, that explains the principles of past life therapy, has excellent examples of students in a class talking about what they learned. We have a DVD, Healing Through Psychodrama and a Whole New Life Through Past Life Therapy. We have coupons that we're going to give you to get $10 off of the special. Unarius Academy Science will be in booth 157. Please come down and see us. We also offer classes that are streamed live on Sunday nights and Wednesday nights that you can tune in and listen and learn more. And thank you. We're in El Cajon, San Diego, but the classes are Sunday, 7 o'clock.
stream of the internet, so wherever you are, you can get it. East County.
It's East County. It's 10 miles east.
Of San Diego.
Magnolia. Magnolia.
405, go south,
Thank you for
5, 8. Thank you.